Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to Sports Time HQ. I am your host, Fernando. Joining with me today is my great co-host, Keith. And of course, Gary's not able to join us here today, but we got ourselves a great guest star today. You've seen him in the past. It's this random guy from the Injury Expertz named Jesse Morse, Dr. Jesse Morse. Jesse, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Getting ramped up for football season. It's right around the corner. We're already starting to accumulate some injuries. It's my vacation is over.
Vacation over indeed. When is it ever over? When is...
I get like 6 months of less injury news. And then 7-8 months of like maybe like about 6 to 7 months of like chaos.
Oh, that's brutal. That's brutal. And you're always writing articles, right?
I mean, I'm still taking care of patients. I have another podcast. I have a supplement line. We stay busy. Lecturing at conferences, life's good. Life's busy. And we're ready for another fantastic football season.
Cheers to that for sure. Keith, how are you doing?
Doing well. I'm not as busy as Dr. Jesse Morse, but I'm doing good. Looking forward to today's show. Looking to see what Dr. Jesse Morse has got to say with all these guys coming back and how it's going to impact our fantasy teams.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of big names, a lot of big injuries happened last year. Jesse will go through them and really tell us whether or not they're good to go get maybe in fantasy or to stay away from them. Obviously, if you listen to it in the past, Jesse, I don't know if you remember, but I remember you came on the show a couple of years ago and we had you talk about Michael Thomas and you hit it right nail on the head. I mean, stay away from Michael Thomas, and you had a good segment, and all of a sudden, boom! Now everyone's like, "Wow, who's this Jesse guy?" I mean, he's really good. He knows his stuff.
Unfortunately, some guys, the writing is on the wall. It's tough. It's when you start to get later in your career, it's much harder to heal. The 22 and 23-year-olds heal really well. The 28 and 29-year-olds, it sounds silly, but it's true. And some guys bounce back and they surprise us, and other guys, just that's it. We start seeing, Michael Gallup. They start to see that, hey, I just don't have it anymore. I made good money, and now it's time to live the second part of my life.
Hopefully, they can still enjoy it too, as well.
Oh yeah.
So that means I still have about half a decade left before I really have to worry about injuries.
or play a strenuous sport, Fernando.
Yeah, I know, honestly. Well, let's get into some news and notes around the league, starting with some news coming out today about Bengals wide receiver Jamar Chase not practicing for the second straight day. Obviously, he's looking for a new contract. He's making right now just over $1 million in base this year, and about $21 million on franchise tag next year if they decide to franchise him. And obviously, Justin Jefferson, he's getting paid a lot of money. I think it's about $35 million a year. So realistically, I understand Jamar's points, but are we concerned about this, or are we just going to keep going with the flow with Jamar Chase?
I don't know what the Bengals are doing. Just pay him already, whether it's going to be, next year or now. What difference does it make? Just pay the man. I mean, you have a top wide receiver one there. Stop messing around. We already know T. Higgins isn't coming back, so you don't got to worry about him. He's one and done this year. So just pay the guy. I know whatever Mike Brown is probably like the least wealthiest owner in the league or whatever, but it doesn't matter. He'll get enough money to pay Jamar. I say just get it done and get him on the field.
Yeah, the tricky part about this stuff is the players. It makes sense, right? For them, they're like, hey, I'm not $1 million or $5 million player. Like at that point, that's like a wide receiver 4 flex kind of bench guy type of thing. He's like, I'm an alpha that should be making 30, high 20s somewhere. I don't know, depending on who you ask and what the terms of the deal look like. But so if he suffers a significant injury playing on $1 million or $5 million, his value goes down, right? He's going to lose. So that's what he's saying. He's like, it's not worth it for me to go out there if I'm going to impact my future if it's not secure, right? And then they can handle the tag, and they can be cute like they did with T. Higgins. So it's tough. I mean, we have CeeDee Lamb, we have Brandon Ayuk. So we see this every year. Some guys hold out. Remember Le'Veon Bell several years ago, and you have some other guys that just play on it and suck it up, and sometimes, most of the time it works out, but sometimes it's a little frustrating between the team and the player.
Yeah, and of course, like, are you guys concerned? Say we're getting into maybe the next 2-3 weeks, and he's still not practicing. Is this now a really big concern for fantasy?
I think so. The closer it gets, it will be.
Well, there's a correlation with. I mean, I'm not going to say he's not prepping and training, but he's not getting full reps, right? He can't be. He's not training like with them on the field. So, unless he's going out and then doing a 2-hour practice, 3-hour practice on his own. He's not getting the full warm-ups. And what do we see in preseason? What do we see in the first 6 weeks of the season? We see soft tissue injuries. And unfortunately, those include ACL tears and Achilles tears, hamstrings, calves, Russell Wilson. And the problem with those is they have a tendency to derail the first part of the season. Look what happened to Joe Burrow last year. He had a calf injury the first week. He re-injured it the first week of the season. And it basically made him awful for the first month. Look what happened to Cooper Kupp. He tweaked his hamstring the first week of the preseason, or whatever you want to call it. He basically tweaked it again right before the season started. And then he was mediocre at best for half the season. So it's like you'd think these things don't carry over, but they definitely do. And that's the problem, is that anything that guys suffer now, they're not getting those full reps. They've been kind of breaking up to this, and then all of a sudden they're injured and they can't finish that training that they started. So now you're expecting them to go from 0 to 100, and the tissue doesn't work that way. The Achilles doesn't like that. The ACL is not always happy with that. The hamstrings definitely aren't happy with that. So that's when you start to see these injuries. So unfortunately, there is some concern. I know CeeDee Lamb has been training down here with my buddy Reef, and he's been working him hard. So I'm not overly worried about him, very in tune with his body. And Ayuk, I can't speak for him, but in general, the guys that hold out, there's some concern. There's some rust. It's realistic. It's there. So if it's in the best interest of the team, they nip this in the bud quick so that everything can go according to plan.
So the more time that he takes to hold out, the higher chance of an injury for him. Yes,
and I mean, within reason. I mean, Jamar doesn't have a significant injury history. He had that weird hip injury a couple of years ago, and that's really about it. But I mean, it's real. Brandon had that shoulder last year. CD's been pretty much spotless besides a concussion. He hasn't missed any significant injuries his entire career. So in general, some guys are at increased risk, especially the soft tissue guys. Think of your Devos and that type of thing. But in general, yes, you need your reps. You need to stress that tissue so when you actually go full 100%, the tissue can handle it.
Okay. Well, hopefully Jamar Chase does get it signed, because I know we like him in fantasy. He's a top wide receiver in fantasy football. Everybody wants him. Someone who's been kind of on the borderline of being fantasy relevant anymore. Like you mentioned just a little while ago about Russell Wilson's calf. He missed the first day of practice due to some calf tightness. I'll ask you kind of a follow-up to what you were saying about Jamar. Is there a concern with this, or should he be good to go for the season?
So
really?
I think so Russell is very smart about his body. Remember that he had that weird thumb finger injury a couple of years ago. He's played in, I wrote it down today, 10 or 11, 12 seasons, I think it's been. He's missed a total of 6 games, and 4 of those games were from that finger. So the guy knows how to take care of his body. He tweaked his calf today. I'm not overly worried. Give him a week or two, and I think he'll be fine. But calves are high risk for re-injury. We saw it with Burrow. You see it a lot in the NBA. But they're just a very poor blood supply area, and you need it to push off. We don't know if it's his front leg or if it's back leg. But I'm not super worried. But in general, I think Justin Fields is taking this offense over by October. Like I don't think Russell holds on to this too long. So if you're waiting at QB or you're in a 2 QB league or just trying to get cute, don't let Justin Fields fall too far, because we know what he can do with his legs, and he was a freaking monster, really without an offensive line and any play calling. So it'll be interesting to see if this gives a significant competitive advantage to Justin Fields.
So you think Fields is going to be kind of making Russell Wilson a bench quarterback from now on?
I mean, Wilson looked pretty mediocre last year.
Yeah, he did.
Right? I mean, Pickens is legit. Freiermuth is pretty good. We'll see how the rest of the staff plays out. Jalen Warren can catch. Najee still looks pretty good. So, I mean, they have some talent. Offensive line, I think they beefed up really well. So, in general, there's some playmakers there that, with the right play calling may make it work.
Keith, what about you? Who do you have starting this job, and do they stay for the whole season?
If Russ is fit, I think they'll start with him, but I think he'll be on a short leash. I think, any of that mediocre play that we've seen from last year, comes to the fore. I think they'll put in Justin Fields, and Fields gives them an extra dimension with his legs. So yeah. I do think I'd be on the same wavelength as Jesse, that October, November, if it's not going well, you'll definitely see Fields in there, because they're not going to sacrifice Tomlin's not had a losing season. They're not going to let that happen, I don't think, easily. And I think you've got a guy there that gives you something different in Justin Fields.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely hasn't missed. That team is just continuing to coast regardless of who's at QB. Yeah. Like, regardless of who they have running or catching the ball, they continue to be relevant and at least a 500 team, if not better. So they're not going to and their defense will keep them in it, but they're not going to just be play garbage ball and be like, yeah, we're just going to stick with him. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to play who's best for the team, and that's why Pickett's not there.
Yeah, completely agree. I think Fields is the better man for the job. I think Russell Wilson's time just is coming to an end in the NFL. But I mean, he does spend a lot of money on his body, like Jesse, you were saying. He really works his body well to be able not to miss games. So we'll have to see what happens with Pittsburgh and Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, the whole quarterback saga there. Last bit of news that I have is Courtland Sutton. He signed a restructured contract, $15.2 million this season. Got a boost in pay for showing up to training camp. I don't know. I really hope Courtland Sutton does good. I want him to succeed in the fantasy world, but he's had his ups and downs.
Yeah, I think that's funny where it's like you get a boost in pay for showing up to do your job. I was like, well done. It's like, well, good on him. But for fantasy, I think he's fine as he'll be wide receiver, whatever. I'd like him as a wide receiver 3-4 type of thing. Flex the best, probably. He'll be fine. I've not a whole lot of interest in getting him early, but I'll take him when I've got two or three wide receivers. I'm fine with that. Then I'll take Courtland Sutton.
I'm not someone I'm targeting. I think Bo Nix could surprise us. Should be the alpha in that offense. Maybe Mims gives us a nice surprise. He has the dynamic and playmaking ability. He just needs to get the ball thrown to, and maybe Franklin becomes relevant too. But I'd like to see Dulcich stay healthy and be relevant too. But Sutton should be the alpha there with Judy gone to Cleveland. And he's, for the most part, been really able to stay really healthy, and he's a touchdown monster. I mean, he's really been good at scoring touchdowns easily. So I think Nix is actually kind of legit. I'm not really worried about Zach Wilson and whoever else is there. So I mean, it'll be interesting. I don't think it's really quote unquote relevant. I think they just made him happy.
Yeah, literally. Man, I'd like to show up to a job and get a little extra pay. For showing up on time.
Good job today.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to do that. But that's all I got for notes. You guys got any news and notes that I didn't mention?
No. There's a couple guys that have been injured in the preseason, or whatever you want to call this right now, training camp, I guess. So I have a rolling kind of news thread on my new website, the injuryexpertz.com, and I fill it out personally daily, so it's only relevant stuff. A lot of guys are NFIs. You know, some of the guys are true injuries. Some of them just ain't quite ready yet. The only one that was semi-relevant is Jaden Reed with a little bit of a toe injury, but he's already back. And you know, Russell Wilson with the calf. And then, you know, there's been a couple other guys that got a little banged up. We haven't seen what happened to Justin Watson. He suffered it was a left ankle or foot injury. I haven't seen an update yet. Yesterday in practice. And then, you know, there's a couple more there that we just need to keep an eye on. Antonio Gibson showed up today for the Patriots. But in general, there's a couple guys we're going to talk about in a minute, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Brooks, several guys that are starting on PUP or whatever you want to call it, because they're not quite ready yet. You know, Hawkinson, Higbee, you know, Mike Williams, several other guys.
I want to circle back to when you mentioned Jaden Reed. This whole Green Bay offense last year struggled with injuries, staying on the field, being healthy. Yep. Are you concerned again with that this season?
I mean, I kind of like Watson this year. I mean, his risk is baked into his price, which is part of the reason why I like him. Hopefully he figured out his hamstring situation. And I think he's the alpha when he's on the field. Tucker Kraft is already coming out of a pec tear. He's on PUP 2 or whatever you want to call it. So he's not ready yet. That may help Musgrave. So they had so many weapons, you know, and it'll be interesting to see. Josh Jacobs was banged up with a hammy about a month ago. Marshawn Lloyd's dealing with a hip already. So like they're already banged up and we haven't even started yet. They haven't even hit each other. And, you know, we'll see Dontavian Wicks. We'll see. I mean, they're so deep that it's just hard to say who's going to get the ball. And, you know, Jordan Love isn't obviously playing because he's holding out, and he'll probably do something in the next couple days to a week. But in general, there's so many moving parts that, yes, there could be an injury, but somebody's just going to step in, which kind of makes it a nightmare for fantasy, at least for everyone except for Love.
Yeah, that's been the biggest concern. I mean, last year, whoever was the wide receiver one really produced, whether it was Watson, whether it was Reed, whether it was Dobbs. They were all over the place. But is there one specific – I'm going to answer this my own question, but is there one specific wide receiver that you're eyeing in drafts? And I think you're going to go with Watson because you said you have a love for Watson this year.
I mean, if you look at his touchdown ratio is friggin' insane. Like, if you look at the numbers, it's bananas. For the number of targets, I think he has like 20 touchdowns or something. Like, it's insane. It's really crazy. But he's had 5 left hamstring strains in the past 3 years. Like, that's pretty hard to do. Like, it's like individual episodes. So, you know, I always forget about Dubes. I like Reed. I think Reed has tons of talent, but he struggles with injuries, right? He's already dealing with a toe. And I don't think Wicks is going to be up there if everyone else is healthy. And you don't know what they're going to do with the tight ends because they could just flip-flop them or play both of them. So, I mean, I'm going to say it's Watson or bust. A second less, you know, the highest floor is probably Reed. But the highest upside, I think, is Watson.
Yeah, Watson scored 5 touchdowns last year in 9 games, and obviously he dealt with injuries in multiple of those games as well. So it is pretty crazy. I know, Keith, I think you're a Jaden Reed guy too.
Yeah, I'm a Reed guy. I mean, it is hard though. I think like I like what Jesse was saying, where like, you know, his ADP on Watson is kind of baked in with the injuries and everything like that. I think kind of the safe play is Love here because you get the one guy and then you don't have to worry about the receivers unless you want to stack someone. That's the way I would look at it. You know what I mean? Because it is kind of a nightmare at the wide receiver position for fantasy.
Brutal. It's brutal. Speaking of quarterback, let's get into the quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers, the man who lasted 4 plays last season, and tore his Achilles. And I know he mentioned how he thought his career could have been done after this torn Achilles. Well, we're going down recovery road now with the doctor. Give it to us. What's your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers? Is he going to be back to his normal Rodgers self?
Yeah, you won't see any changes at all. He'll look exactly the same. And if we're talking about Cousins, I don't remember if we are. If we're talking about Cousins, the difference between Rodgers and Cousins, besides 5 or 6 years, is that Rodgers suffered a left Achilles tear, which is his front plant foot, and it was earlier in the season. Cousins suffered a rear plant or post, like power foot, I call it, which is much bigger of a deal.
Okay.
And Rodgers still has that mental, still has the cannon for an arm, still has the passion, threw a bomb to Garrett Wilson today. Has just a stud in Garrett Wilson just waiting to eat 1 million yards and 500 touchdowns. So I think that matchup is perfect. Kirk, I'm a little bit more concerned about because of that rear side. You remember when the calf is annoying, but not as bad as obviously as Achilles. And think about how poorly Joe Burrow did when he couldn't step into his throws early in the season. He couldn't get under his throws because he couldn't push off his back leg. So basically what you're doing, you just have to launch it with your upper body, and you can't. I mean, if it's 10 yards, fine, but 40 yards down the field, it's a lot harder to put the correct English on it with perfect placement, getting it over a defender. Like, it's a lot harder. So it'll be interesting to see how Cousins plays out. He has tons of weapons. We've seen, Drake London could smash this year. I think Kyle Pitts should smash this year. Bijan is nearly on the moon. And then we might even see, some of the other guys that may be a little sneaky, probably not, but he has the arsenal. But the question is he going to have issues with velocity? That's what I'm waiting to see, because he was medically cleared today or yesterday.
Okay. And now here's my follow-up. So ADP wise, Kirk Cousins is going ahead of Aaron Rodgers. Cousins going as the RB 18, and then Rodgers going as the QB 20. Are you just staying away completely in drafts of Kirk, or if he falls in later rounds, are you willing to take the chance on him?
So I predominantly play I'm not a big best ball guy. I've never been. I don't know why. I predominantly play in either regular 1 QB. Every once in a while, I'll play in a super flex. So for me, I love rushing quarterbacks. Like, the Konami code is like a cheat code. But with that being said, this year there's so many Konami codes. Like, we added a healthy Kyler. We added Jaden Daniels, could be friggin' ridiculous. Justin Fields is still lurking way, way, way later. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is pretty cheap. Justin Herbert is cheap. And then we still have about 8 or 9 elite quarterbacks at the top that also are going to run. Anthony Richardson, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. So it's like, I don't think if these guys don't run for 300 to 400 yards, I don't think they're going to be in the top 10. Yeah. Like, I just don't see it happening. Like, and like, even Mahomes gets about 300 or so, not really trying. But it's going to really hurt guys. And you saw last year with Tua had a beautiful year, right? Stayed healthy, had 2 elite receivers, but he lost over 20 touchdowns to his running backs, and he doesn't run the ball. So he finishes like the QB 18 or 2, somewhere around there. So I'm like, that was a really good season for him statistically, but unfortunately he lost it with his running and runners, and then he didn't do any help to his running. So I kind of put him in that same area as like Tua, Rodgers, and Cousins. They're not a whole lot different in terms of what they offer, because none of them run and they all have weapons around them. So that's kind of the way I look at it. Either I reach for a Kyler or something like that, or maybe an Anthony Richardson, or I wait and I get a Jaden and something like that. And just, I mean, that kid is special if he can stay healthy.
So obviously you have no concern really for Aaron Rodgers, little concern for Kirk Cousins. I'm a Garrett Wilson fan. Keith, between Drake London and Garrett Wilson, you're also a Garrett Wilson fan.
Garrett Wilson fan, yeah.
Yep. So you're willing to spend more money for Garrett Wilson over Drake London because of the concern of Kirk Cousins, correct?
I think Garrett Wilson, I mean, he's already broken crazy records. He's the only he's already had 300 targets in 2 years. Think about that statement.
It's ridiculous.
So like, and now you have Aaron Rodgers, who's a precision artist and will zone in on him and still throws a beautiful ball. I mean, Drake London has the pedigree, but best case scenario, in my opinion, Drake London is last year's Garrett Wilson.
Oh, that's interesting. That's
good. So it's like, but Garrett Wilson could finish top 3, like legit. Yeah. You know, and if anybody, like, look what happened to Jefferson last year. He missed, 7 games, whatever it was, at the hammy in the middle of the season? That derailed his entire season. Mm-hmm. You know, and all it takes is 1 or 2 stupid injuries, and you miss a couple of games to a month, and now you're no longer top 5. I guess if you play points by game, then a different story. But but in terms of accumulating points, you need to be healthy, and you need to get a ton of targets. And I just don't know if we're going to see enough targets for Drake London in order for him to get to that top 8, top 10 tier. And that's kind of what you need him to be if you're paying the price you're going to pay.
Yeah, and especially elite players. Like, I'm sure elite players, you can miss maybe 1, 2, max 3 games and still be a top 10 player. I mean, we've seen it happen with Christian McCaffrey. He misses a game and boom, he's still RB1 by a mile. So, okay. Aaron Rodgers, not concerned. Kirk Cousins, concerned a little bit, but not really too concerned about the receivers. But Garrett Wilson, go get him. Sky's the limit for him. I love him. Keith loves him. Yep. Jesse loves him. Let's go on to someone who is freshly out of college, came in, not freshly, maybe one year, sophomore year coming in. Anthony Richardson from Indianapolis. He faced an injury that ended his season, a shoulder injury. The expectation is to have no limitations for training camp. Now, obviously, it's a shoulder injury. Shoulder injury is a lot more different than an ACL, Achilles, lower body injury. And obviously, you need a shoulder to throw the ball if you're going to be a quarterback. So, Jesse, I'll ask you about Anthony Richardson. Do you have faith in him in fantasy? And is there potential for him to still be this elite quarterback that everybody's been eye-popping about?
I'm not concerned about the shoulder.
Okay.
I'm concerned about his style of play.
Yeah.
Me too.
He's reckless.
Yeah.
You want to see a crazy injury history for a 21-year-old? Go on my site and look at Anthony Richardson. The guy's he's already got 10 entries. Like he's 21. He tore his meniscus multiple times. He's suffered this same shoulder that was his 3rd time he suffered that shoulder injury. He suffered an ankle injury, a concussion, and I think it was a knee or something else. He played 4 games. Like, the talent is there. We know that, right? He's freakish. There's the weapons. Josh Downs is going to break out. I love Jelani Woods. Jonathan Taylor looks really good. Michael Pittman, still legit. Adonai Mitchell, we'll see what he can bring. They're loaded, right? They have an elite line. But can he play smart? Right? That's what makes Lamar so smart and so special. That's what makes Josh Allen special, besides the fact he's freaking huge, is that he knows when to duck. He knows when to freaking run over people. And he plays smart, right? Use your legs as a weapon. And that's part of my concern, is that if he can, like, these guys are going to target him because the game changes when he's out of it. Prove to me that you can last a full season. I love his upside. I drafted him at the 5th pick in Scott Fish Bowl, but that's also a ginormous league that everything has to go perfect, and the rushing upside for a quarterback in that statistically is just insane. But would I take him traditionally over Mahomes, Lamar? I probably wouldn't even take him over Kyler, to be honest with you. Because I think those guys have a similar floor, but less risk. Yep. I mean, the talent is there, but can he put it all together?
Yeah, his ADP right now is QB6. And personally for me, and Keith, you and I, we mentioned it last week with Gary, I just think ADP at QB6 is just his highest point ceiling. I just don't see a way where Richardson could get as a QB6 or better and smash it. That's why I consider Anthony Richardson a bust for me this season because of where he's going, especially the risk concern.
I think it's more the injury concern for me on the ADP. I think if he gets a full season with his legs, he can break into top 5. But like we obviously I wasn't aware of the all the injuries, and he's only 21. I was more on the side of his recklessness. That was like on show there, through 4 games last season.
The problem is his injury risk isn't baked in.
No, it's not.
They literally are treating him as if he's healthy and has never had an injury.
Yeah.
Like why is Kyler QB 10 or 9 or something?
Yeah, exactly.
And he finished as the QB 3 in his rookie season. And he's had 3 top 10 finishes.
Yep.
Why is he behind Anthony Richardson? And Anthony Richardson just came off a season-ending injury and suffered 2 other injuries before that season even ended. So that's like, yes, Christian Watson's ADP is baked into his risk, and that's why his ADP is what it is. Nick Chubb, who we'll probably talk about in a minute, same difference. Anthony Richardson's is not.
Yeah.
So that's my concern. Like you're pretty much drafting him at his ceiling, and you better pray that he doesn't get injured.
Yeah.
Because especially if you're in a 2 QB league, then I get it because then all the QBs are going to be gone. But if you're in a 1 QB league, like it's kind of risky.
Yeah, I mean, you really go into the quarterbacks after. You mentioned Kyler Murray. I mean, Dak, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff. They're all going after him. And I'm fine drafting any of those guys over Anthony Richardson this season. I just think it's just wild how high he's going. And like you mentioned, the injury risk is not built into his ADP. And I think that's the biggest concern. And I think everyone's going to get upset when they draft him. And if he does get injured and miss time, everyone's going to be all out on him.
Yeah, I mean, very well could. We know he's special, right? We saw it. There's no question. But you got to remember, who wasn't on the field when he was playing? Jonathan Taylor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mentioned that last.
Remember, that was when he did his contract thing, right?
Yeah.
Another time it worked out. He wasn't on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So, that changes a little bit. But in general, he's a year older. He's a year smarter. But nonetheless, there's risk with that pick. People just need to understand it before they click the button.
Moving on to another guy who also had a shoulder injury, Deshaun Watson. Now, this guy has had a roller coaster of a career. I mean, coming in from college, he was fantastic. One of the elite quarterbacks, in my opinion. I loved him. Thought he was a great quarterback. Got a record deal in Cleveland. Cleveland loves doing reckless things and still go 0-16 somehow, multiple years and everything. You can talk trash because Gary's not here, but Watson, is there concern? I mean, we saw Joe Flacco do really good in Cleveland, so I think there is a system there where Watson can be successful. But can he stay healthy?
So, you want to see another injury history that's crazy? Go look at Deshaun's.
Yeah.
For one ACL in college, to his other ACL in his rookie season. I think it was rookie season. Might have been his second season.
I think it was rookie. Late.
He went back to back QB5. That ended in 2019 with all of his escapades.
Yeah.
Last year, he injured his shoulder in 2 different spots. They were not connected. Indirectly, they were, but they one led to the other. But the first one was a fluky injury, a rotator cuff partial tear, which is the one in the front that is super important for throwing. It's basically how you push. Obviously important for throwing. Then he fractured the ball, basically the rim where the ball sits. So now he has a screw going into that, which eventually is going to cause arthritis, especially in a throwing quarterback. Their offensive line took a massive hit. If I remember correctly, I don't have my notes with me. The other way around. It was a bad, and now it's better. I think is how it went from like bad to much better. I think that's correct. But either way, he hasn't run a whole lot compared to what he used to. Remember, he used to run a ton. So I just, again, with all the other elite players ahead of him. I mean, unless you're playing in 2 QB or something, like, why do you really even need to talk about like the 18 to 30 guys? Like,
Yeah.
how many QBs are you drafting? Like, you really only need one, except for your bye week, unless the guy gets injured. It's like, why, are you playing in a 20-team league? Like, you don't need to worry about Deshaun Watson's, QB, whatever, 23 or whatever his QB is, his ADP is right now.
Yeah. He's a guy I'm pretty much out on. I have him in Dynasty. I've been trying to sell him to you, Fernando. You're not budging. But yeah, that's in redraft, not bothered one bit with him at all. So yeah, it's not a guy I'm worried about.
Yeah, I mean, you asked me this back in like maybe 2018, 2019, Keith. I would have smashed the trade accept button right there. Yeah, I used to be a big Watson fan, but of course the ACL injuries were fine to me. I thought he would be still fine with the ACL injury, but now it's a shoulder injury. You mentioned how it's going to cause arthritis. Does that mean you're kind of seeing Watson's career closing into an end? Versus
we've already reached the peak. We're past the peak.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say he's going to end his career, this year, but we've seen the best of Deshaun Watson. I mean, I still love Amari Cooper this year. We'll see what happens to Judy. Everybody forgets he exists. Njoku had a fantastic season, and we'll probably have another one. So I think they'll be relevant, but I have concerns about Watson. I do. I don't know. I just think that's going to be one of the worst contracts we've ever seen.
And of course, it comes from Cleveland. Concerning, and we'll see what happens with Watson. Hopefully, his career isn't almost over, but the doctor has talked.
For fantasy, it is anyways.
Yeah, for fantasy.
Yeah, for fantasy. He's not going anywhere with that much money owed to him.
Exactly.
Oh no, they can't do anything with it. Moving on to someone who is being drafted as a top 6 quarterback currently, Joe Burrow. He was officially fully cleared for contact. He tore his ligament in his wrist. If I am correct, this is his throwing wrist, correct, Jesse?
Correct. This is his throwing wrist, and the problem with this, and I need to I'm pulling up his profile real quick. So he had a very rare injury. How rare? Never happened to a quarterback in the NFL ever. We have an N of 1. There's no comparisons. There's been plenty of other positions. Jaylen Brown of the Celtics had this a couple years ago on his non-shooting wrist. This is a scapholunate ligament tear. Basically what that means, that's on your thumb side, kind of down here. Very important. Very important. So it's kind of like a dart throwing, kind of like that motion. Threw some dimes today. Obviously didn't have Jamar. T didn't do a whole lot either. The talent around him is there, right? Here's my concern with Burrow. In half of his NFL seasons, he suffered a season-ending injury.
It's an interesting stat.
The other 2, he finished top 7. 4 and 7. 7 and 4, if you want to go by older to newer. With that being said, he's never run for more than 250 yards. 259. But with all of the running quarterbacks, we're going to add Daniel Jones. I don't think it's going to be relevant, but it's still technically there. If Justin Fields becomes relevant again, he's there. Drake May, probably not this year. He's a running quarterback. J.J. McCarthy can run. Bo Nix, I don't think he's much of a runner. But you just added several other guys, plus a healthy Kyler, plus Josh Allen, plus Jalen Hurts, plus Mahomes. You're not talking about Jordan Love. If this guy doesn't throw for 4,600 yards and 40 touchdowns or whatever it's going to be, where does he actually finish?
He could probably finish
everything has to go perfect for him to finish in the top 7, 4 to 7, everything without that wrist injury. That's assuming his ADP is not accounting for his wrist injury.
Yeah.
Now,
right?
Yeah, Keith, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, the hard thing about this, we've only seen a couple of really good seasons. The rest are all, ended with injury. So just one for you, Jesse, with the wrist injury. Is it really hard to get info? That like he's the only one, like, or
so
any sort of
the data I spoke with, I'm not a hand surgeon, but the data, well, my buddy who's a hand surgeon, he says 80% do well, but there's a 20% chance of re-injury or risk. And it's going to be more so on breaking his fall. That, in my opinion, that type of movement.
Mm-hmm.
But it's perfect now, right? He just came off months on PT. Everything's perfect. But wait until he starts hitting helmets, getting pushed to the ground. He's not one that avoids sacks, right? I mean, he always leads the league in sack rate. He's really high. So what happens when there's stress on that wrist in week 10 or whatever, in the middle of the season? And it's like Joey can't go or he can't practice because his wrist is bothering him. So that's why I'm out on pretty much the entire Bengals offense. It's too risky for me to go. I love T's value. T Higgins' value is silly. But I just but there's so many other options that are less risky. It's not worth the risk for me. So that's kind of where I'm at with him and with the Bengals.
Now, do you think that with his ADP, do you think he should be being drafted really as a high-end QB2 type of player versus
like that, like the 10 to 14 range? I think that makes more sense for him.
Yeah.
Okay. And now you're concerned on Jamar Chase's value as well, then?
I mean, yeah, because
good.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw Chase hold his value with Browning, and Browning actually did really good. But I don't know. I just something about Chase and Jefferson this year that I'm just avoiding them. I'm targeting CeeDee Lamb. I'm targeting Amon-Ra. I'm targeting Garrett Wilson. Like, there's guys I'm targeting, and there's other guys that I'm like, there's not enough leeway for me to say yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was going to be my next question, but you answered it pretty much. Was like, if you're not going to be going for Chase, then you're not going for Jefferson with the QB situation. But it sounds
I mean, the talent is stupid, right? We know that, and the injury risk is really low. Even though he had that fluky injury, he's never missed a game besides what he did. But Amon-Ra, I've only caught clips of it, but the wide receiver Netflix thing, dude played with like a partially torn friggin' oblique, which is an abdominal muscle, hand, foot, mouth disease, which is ridiculously toxic in terms of like spreading it. I don't know how the hell that played out. And like he's a dog. Like he plays through injury.
Yeah.
And then Lamb is just, I've met him. He's a really nice kid, but like that, just a monster. Like he's so smooth, it's crazy. And then Wilson, as I mentioned, like if he doesn't score like 10 to 15 touchdowns, then obviously one of them got injured, him or Rodgers. But like it's going to be insane. So it's like going back in time when Devontae Adams was in his prime, like with Green Bay. Like that's kind of what you're getting with Garrett Wilson, maybe even a little bit better. So like I'm not going to risk it with Chase. I'm not going to risk it with Jefferson. When I have those fallback options. I love Puka too. I mean, it would be interesting to see how that plays out with a healthy Cooper Kupp. But there's a lot of guys to like. You just kind of have to pick your guy.
Yep. And I think a guy that we all are out on, as both of you take a nice little sip of water, Daniel Jones. Obviously, I just wanted to quickly say he tore his ACL. Jesse, you have no concern on ACLs for quarterbacks, I'm sure, but
a little bit. I mean, you saw expected dip with Kyler Murray. there you see with the documentary, they really wanted to get up and grow up and get Jaden Daniels. They really wanted to get him.
Yeah.
They don't want to put all their health. I mean, this is the second season that Daniel Jones ended his season prematurely with a season-ending injury. Remember, he had that neck injury.
Yep.
Right? So, like, and what scares me worse is their offensive line is awful.
Yeah.
So you're asking a guy coming off of an ACL with one potentially elite receiver and a bunch of talent around him with an awful line to excel, success. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't see a world where Daniel Jones could be relevant.
I feel bad
I think
for
this
him.
is last season.
Yeah. It's like, good luck.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's just like throwing him out there and going,
Yeah.
make it work.
Neighbor's gonna be so pissed. It's just, I'm wide open.
Oh, he's
Bro,
going.
I'm on my back. Wait, what do you want me to do? Like,
That's
you
exactly.
want to block for me? Like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Last time a receiver had a 1,000-yard receiving season on the Giants was back in 2018. And Jesse, I'm sure you know who that is, Mr. Odell Beckham Jr.
Yep.
And then
Special.
And then Darius Slayton, who's still on the team,
Yep.
is the most recent guy who had 95 plus targets, and that was back in 2020. So,
Yeah.
It's a tough road for Malik.
I do like Wandale. It's kind of a sneaky play, more of like a flex 4 if you're playing in a deeper league. Sneaky slot guy. Remember, he came off the ACL last year, so he wasn't kind of all there. He's shifty, so he needs that knee. Devin is kind of and Tyrone Tracy will be interesting to see how talented he is. But in general, nah.
Stay away from the Giants.
Stay away from the Giants, like I've been doing. Going into the running backs now, Nick Chubb, a big injury for him. My concern is he is on the PUP list. I do believe, how to say it, Grotzky injury, knee injury. Is that correct?
Yeah, so he had a bad tear. I did a video on him this morning, actually. He had an ACL and a bad MCL. Like, and the reason why that's relevant is because if you just sprain the MCL, then you can do them both at once, or you don't even need to do the MCL. If you full thickness tear the MCL, which is what he did, which is the ligament on the inside of the knee, you need to repair that first. Wait 6 to 8 weeks and then repair the ACL.
Wow.
So he had a 2-stage ACL reconstruction. That sets him back, right? Adding to the fact that he's not a spring chicken anymore, right? He's 28, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. The strength is there. Wow, we saw him squatting 5-something recently. The strength's there, but that's not what he needs the knee for. He needs the knee for cutting and to be shifty, right? And the problem is his knee's not going to be ready until about October, November. So I think there's about a 55% chance that he plays week 1. Like, and as if you're drafting now, you get a stupid value on Jerome Ford. I draft the week before the season. That's how I've always been. So I lose that if we hear like, oh, he's going to start the season on PUP. Well, you just lost all that benefit, right? It's gone. But right now, Jerome Ford is a friggin' steal. And if you look what he did last year, that team only got better. And he can catch. And Chubb really doesn't catch ever. He's just not, that's not his thing. So best case scenario, Chubb comes back and plays 12 games, not going to catch a whole lot of balls. Best case scenario, he's at 5 to 6 yards a carry, which is perfect for where he used to be. Maybe he's the RB30.
Chubb going right now RB35 and Jerome Ford going RB39.
That's just,
so it's like, I love the name. I love the talent. If anybody could do it, it'd be him. But it's just the first year back. Last year, Breece Hall was a fluke. He got like 17 targets in one game.
Yeah.
That's freaking crazy. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, you remove, if that team was relevant, he would have been better, right? Obviously. Mm-hmm. But if you take out all, like, half of his crazy target games when they were awful and that was just basically killing time, that was the only reason he was top 10, especially if you play PPR. He had a fantastic season. He stayed healthy, but he's been the first one since Adrian Peterson in 2011. Like when most of you were probably not even playing, right? Like, Dalvin Cook struggled his first year. Saquon struggled his first year. Like, it's okay to struggle in your first year. That's normal. Brees was the exception to the rule. But I don't think Chubb will be. I don't think he'll be the exception. I think he'll be what we expect, unfortunately.
And before we go on to our other running back, my question to you is, do you think the peak of his career is past, given his age?
Yeah, I mean, not many guys peak after 28, and especially coming off of this is the second time he's injured the same knee. If you want to see a nasty photo, Google Nick Chubb, University of Georgia knee injury. It's the same knee. No idea how he did not tear his ACL. I looked at it, I'm like, but it was surgically reconstructed, which is why, and that's what he tore. He tore some of the reconstruction to give you an idea of how significant his new one was. Wow. So, unfortunately, I think he'll play for a couple more years, but we'll never see him like the stud he was a couple years ago, unfortunately.
Very unfortunate for Nick Chubb, but he has had a stellar career. Given the fact.
Yeah, no question.
Someone who has a struggling career is J.K. Dobbins. This poor guy came in with talent, and he's just had no luck to stay on the field.
After another.
Injury after injury, exactly. Currently coming off torn Achilles. And, Jesse, last time you were here, you mentioned how running backs, it's very low chance for them to make an impact after torn Achilles. Obviously, we saw Cam Akers come back with a torn Achilles, and then he got injured again.
He tore his other one, by the way.
Yeah, tore his other one. So I'll ask you, J.K. Dobbins, is there room for him to be relevant still, or is it kind of just over?
I mean, he's in a perfect situation, right? His ADP is baked in, right? It's there. He's friggin' free. Literally. He's playing with his partner in crime again, Gus Edwards, which we know what he can do, right? And he's got an elite quarterback again, right? Justin Herbert. And now the guy that I'm actually more, I wouldn't say concerned about, but excited about is actually Kamani Vidal. I think he takes over. That in my opinion, that's who will take over. Achilles tears for running backs are unbelievably awful. They're awful. James Robinson, Cam Akers 1, Cam Akers 2, Marlon Mack 1, Marlon Mack 2, Tariq Cohen. Justice Hill was kind of last year. The only guy that has been relevant was Donta Foreman. Wow. But here's the caveat. He didn't return to the NFL for 4 years.
Yeah.
That's like talking about J.K. Dobbins in 2028.
Wow.
And even then, Foreman was a plotter, not much, just an accumulator, right? He served as Henry's backup. He went down with his foot, accumulated yards. He served as CMC's backup. When CMC got traded, he accumulated yards. But he's never been elite. He had the talent coming out of college, but the Achilles he basically derailed his true career. Until I see someone that actually defies it, he's going to struggle. The Achilles is awful for running backs, but I would love to see him do it because I think it'd be a great story. He's had a hell of a career. The poor kid can't catch a break at all.
And he's still pretty young, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's 24, 25.
Yeah.
He's still young. But, I mean, everything started, in my opinion, with his ACL. Yeah. And here's the thing about ACLs. They're almost all 75, 80%. I don't know exact data is, but almost all of them are non-contact, right? The guy's knee just gives out.
Yeah.
His was contact, which is rare and makes it worse because if the guy didn't hit him, he wouldn't have tore it. That's what I'm getting at. But the type of ACL tear he had was the same as Javonte Williams, which is an ACL, LCL. Javonte also had a PCL. That's the worst combo you can have. You lose your lateral ability. You can't cut out on that knee because you lose the entire lateral component of the knee. So there's just different levels to it. And unfortunately, he had, in my opinion, the worst one, or that you can come back from, worst one. You add that, he compensated with the other knee, other leg, for his Achilles on that side. And now he's, now he's trying to come back with a bad Achilles on one side and a bad knee on the other side. So it's like, low threshold, you might as well throw a dart, late. Worst comes to worst, you drop them. But it's unfortunate.
Being drafted as the RB50 right now. Do you see Vidal? You said you're interested in Vidal. Do you see him being the RB1 in that offense by the end of the season, or do you think Gus the Bus stays as the RB1?
Gus is a plotter. Gus does a great job with touchdowns. I don't really count him out per se, but I think if you're looking for someone exciting, it's going to be Vidal. I think. I mean, again, he could end up being a nothing, but if you look at his college tape, it's the accumulation of stats, he did a good job.
All right. Interesting. JK obviously I think was Keith's guy, but I think he's going to have to rethink maybe a little bit on JK.
It was my guy for a deep sleeper on a show a few weeks ago, just because, like Jesse said, obviously the injuries, but he's practically free. So if he does, if he does do all right, he could be a league winner. Yeah,
the entry is there. I mean, the path is there. It's not like he's RB20, right? Yeah. And you have to choose him or Kenneth Walker or something. It's like, no, it's basically him or somebody that's fourth on the depth chart or something like that. So it's like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. This guy has a path, so I get it. Is it actually going to come to fruition? I don't know, but it'd make for a great story.
Yep.
Very much. A great story is this big guy named Tank Dell. He had,
big?
I mean, he came in, he just ended up lighting up the offense. He was so good. A lot of people loved him, and then he had that ending injury with the broken fibula. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is now there. So there's obviously more roadblocks for him to be fantasy relevant again. But broken fibula, is that a concern in wide receivers? Do we see them come back really?
Yeah, this is not a big deal. And here's the thing that is so disappointing to me. He did it while he was blocking to get into the end zone.
Yeah.
He's 170 pounds. Who the hell is he going to block?
Yeah, nobody.
And they rolled up on his leg and he broke his ankle. That's basically what happened. It's disappointing that he also got shot at in this offseason.
Yeah.
But he did okay with that. Talented. Super talented. I don't worry about this ankle at all. This is not a big deal at all. Nico is a stud. Okay, Nico's legit. He's coming off a shoulder injury we did not know about. And Stephon is not ready to just lay down. I think he's still got some in the tank. You still got Schultz. You still got Mixon there. There's a lot of mouths to feed. I don't know how many. We're going to see a little regression from Stroud. I don't know. He played at a ridiculous level last year. So, I love Dell, but at his price, unless he, there's just so much uncertainty there. I have no idea how this offense is going to play out. And they realistically, what they're going to get a 20, Schultz gets some, and then Mixon, Does Nico Collins get 26% target share? And then does somebody get injured and then he steps up? The kid's talented, but he's on the field. But when they're all healthy, it's going to be a freaking nightmare.
Especially being drafted as the wide receiver 30. I mean, being drafted as a wide receiver 30 with Diggs in the offense and Nico in the offense, Schultz, Mixon, like you mentioned. I mean, that's really hard of an ADP to take on Tank Dell, especially because he could be projected as the wide receiver 3 in that offense.
Yeah, he very well could be. There's no question, and it wouldn't surprise anyone. Could he have some monster games? Yeah, of course. But could he have games that he's kind of irrelevant? Yeah. I mean, and who's going around him, right? So that's really what you have to decide.
And now it's T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, right after him, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin.
I will take Keenan Allen every day and twice on Sundays over, Look at what Keenan Allen has done.
He's so amazing.
If you look at how open he gets against zone coverage, it's ridiculous.
Especially with his age, he still is so elite.
He's 31. Don't tell Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
But, like, the kid, look how many freaking targets he had last year. He finished as the wide receiver 3 or 4, somewhere up there. Is it crazy to think that Caleb Williams depends on him a little bit? Not crazy to me.
No.
That's a steal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking here on Fantasy Pros ADP. You've got George Pickens 1 ahead of Tank Dell. I mean, I'm on Pickens every day of the week over Tank Dell there. So you're getting a wide receiver 1 there.
Yeah, I mean, he's their wide receiver 1. He has the potential. Remember, I wrote his profile up yesterday. He was a 5-star recruit at Georgia.
Yeah.
The only reason that he struggled in his senior year, whatever his last year was, because he tore his ACL in the spring practices. And he missed all but 4 games of his last season. And then he got drafted afterwards.
Yeah.
So he wasn't even, by the time he got drafted, he was a year out from his ACL. Like, he wasn't even like, so his first season in the NFL, he was still, kind of getting acclimated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's had, the crazy quarterback play. So, like, yeah, Pickens has it. He has the talent. So, yes, I would take both of them over Tank Dell. And I like Tank Dell. It's just where he's going.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Tank Dell was going maybe like 15, like wide receiver 45, maybe. I think that's more of like
More
accurate.
reasonable.
Yeah, more reasonable. That's the word I was trying to find. More reasonable than wide receiver 30. Wide receiver 30 is too rich.
Yeah.
Going into the last 2 players, Mike Williams really quickly tore his ACL. Again, he's just kind of been all around, but no concern really for him to be fantasy relevant. I mean, we know he's not.
I think we'll see him as the. I like Conklin this year. Obviously, Garrett Wilson, we talked about. Brees is going to get a ton of love. Mike Williams might surprise is like 50 balls or something like that if he can stay healthy. But in general, like, it's not someone I'm going out of my way. I mean, he's always been a touchdown monster, right? He has great speed. Wide receivers don't do as bad in their first year back from ACL as running backs do, right? For the most part, like, Cooper Kupp came back and had a friggin' monster season, right? Yeah. So it's not as bad. Yeah. So in general, is someone I'm targeting? No, but I'm not avoiding him. It's just like, okay, if he's there and he's a good pick, okay. Or probably a good best ball guy, to be honest with you. That's a great best ball pick.
Yeah. Lastly, real quick, Mark Andrews. I only want to ask you this really because he's really the biggest tight end injury that we want to talk about. Leg injury. He came back in the 2024 AFC Championship with only 31% of the snaps. Only had 2 targets, caught both of them. Is there a concern for 2024? Is it going to linger? Or is he going to be really good to go and back to his form?
I have a little concerns. Not enough to freak out. He could lead the tight ends in touchdowns. Okay. Well, Laporte is talented, but that was fluky. Okay. Kincaid should show up a little bit more. Kelsey's still there. Okay. I'm not ready to dethrone Kelsey yet. I personally love Ingram. Look at how many targets Ingram got. It will freaking blow your mind. Hawkinson has a much more concerning injury, obviously, and he very well could miss the first half of the season. So, I understand he's going to be really good when he's on the field, depending on who's throwing to him. But, I can't – for me, Andrews is more of the 5-6 as opposed to the 1-2-3. Okay. But he has the talent. He's done it, right? He was the tight end 1 before. He finished before. So he has it there. Everything is lined up, right? So everything is still lined up, but that could work out well, and maybe even more this season. Not a big concern, but a little concern. A little concern about the ankle.
Okay. Well, that's going to do it here on this week's show. Dr. Jesse Morse, what is going on with you and your world? Where can people follow you and all that, and then some?
So unforeseen circumstances led me to having to close the Fantasy Doctors I shifted and created a new company, running it by myself, called the Injury Expertz, with a Z. I predominantly put all my content on the site. It's only it's like a Patreon type deal, but it's behind it a paywall. I'm going to have all my crazy, injury reports. You can search injury histories, which is kind of cool. Like, hey, how many people suffered a high ankle sprain over the past 3 years? That's a running back, and you can put it in the system, and it will spit it out for you, which is pretty cool. And you can see all the injury histories. I have breakdowns on a ton of players, and I'll put most of my videos up there that are quality videos. And I think it's like $5 or something. And then there's a draft guide on there for people that want that type of content. I'll do a little bit on my new YouTube channel. I'll do some on TikTok and a little bit on Instagram, but predominantly Twitter is my primary. And I'll post everything on my website.
At Dr. Jesse Morse, that's where you can follow him, and theinjuryexperts.com. Make sure the experts is spelled with a Z, though. I was joined by my great co-host, Keith. Go follow him all over social media at SwampDonkey_90 and on Instagram at HuddleUp_NFL. I'm Fernando. I'm your host of Sports Time HQ. We'll see you all at our normal time next Thursday.